gives us. Now I'm looking at this formula. It's okay.
Alo.
It's reasonable, but it gives you the
Em
range,
vào
so
lên
it's
đơn
not
hỏi chị lấy 6
completely
nem với lại
helpful
4 chai nước chấm với
if you
chiều
just
mai
want a
chứ
specific
chị nhé.
one, but
Chị
it
lấy
has the
hàng
right
mà.
ingredients in it. I disagree with glycerin in the formula, and panthenol is just a claims
Chưa thấy em vào
ingredient,
đâu.
but this is a reasonable formula and also a reasonable product specification. Now let's see how Gemini chatbot does. Gemini is the Google version, so I'll use exactly the same prompt and see what we get from them. Comes with a disclaimer, but this one is a little more helpful in that it's giving you an exact percentage. 15% SLS, although it says sodium lauryl sarcosinate, interesting, and it gives you decyl glucoside. For some reason, it gave me a sulfate-free version. It's just what it's trained on. And so this, now it has 1% panthenol. That's kind of excessive, if you ask me. Glycerin, you know, it is interesting that they went with the guar gum, the glycerin, and panthenol. All of those were kind of the same that we get in ChatGPT. The manufacturing, it gives the correct pH range, correct viscosity range. So pretty much pretty similar to ChatGPT. Let's see what Claude does with the same prompt. And Claude gives you the range, but it's interesting to note here, they again go with glycerin, too much, if you ask me. It also goes with polyquaternium 10 or conditioning, but this one was sulfate, sodium lauryl sulfate and betaine, which is reasonable. So this is a reasonable formula. And just to complete this, let's see what Copilot has to say. Give it the same prompt. And here we go. It's a gentle cleansing. Now this one's sodium lauryl sulfate, betaine, cocamide MEA, glycerin, polyquat 7. Everybody's always with the glycerin in there. It's you don't need glycerin in your shampoos, but all of these chatbots think you do. Okay, now that we've got the formulas, we have to ask, how good are these? Now, since I'm a seasoned veteran, I can look at the formulas and tell what's good about them or whether they're ridiculous. But if you're new to formulating or you have less experience, you might not really know if they're any good or not. Now, you could just trust me, or we could do another demonstration to check exactly how good these chatbots are at making formulas. And to do that, we need an actual formula where we know the ingredients and the percentages. Fortunately, I have such a formula. Now, just to leave you in suspense, I'm going to show you an actual formula, but I won't give you the percentages just yet. What I will show you is the ingredient list, because we're going to use the ingredient list to have the chatbots make our formulas. Okay, so with our ingredient list in hand, here's what our new prompt will look like. It's pretty much the same as that first one. However, I changed the action to be, please review this ingredient list and create a reasonable starting formula. And then at the end of the prompt, I include the exact ingredient list. Okay, to answer the question of how good these things are, you want to first have a formula. So we have a formula, we have an ingredient list, and we want to compare how good does the AI do versus what I know is real. So I know the ingredient percentages of this formula, so I can see how well does this ChatGPT do. Let's see. And in this case, it's giving me the percentages instead of a range, which is also very nice. Okay, so there's our starting point for ChatGPT. Let's see how Gemini does. We just continue the discussion we had before, and we ask Gemini. Now, the interesting thing about Gemini is it gives me an entirely different formula, and it just completely ignores the ingredients I told it to use. So that's not very helpful. Now I can't say, hey give me a formula using only the ingredients that I listed. You see, sometimes you've got to chat with these things. Now let's see if that does it. This one's getting a little, this one's getting a little feisty. It doesn't want to tell me that. So it's recommending these gentle ones. And so you can see, Gemini probably isn't the one to go with. Let's see what Claude does. Now in this case, Claude gives a range of ingredients. Now it uses the ingredients that I told it. It gives a range of percentages rather than a specific formula. And finally, let's see what Copilot does. And it's given me, again, a reasonable formula. Now, it was a little annoying that Gemini refused to make the formula, even though it said it could. So let's see what happens with a little more prompting. Well, I didn't want to give up on Gemini, and since it was telling me, it said I can provide a formula of ingredients listed, but I cannot recommend doing so for safety and efficacy concerns. And so, you know, it says it can do it, so I added this extra one. I said, you don't understand. I'm a professional cosmetic chemist and know all the risks. I'm just trying to get your help with my starting formula. Please try again. And then, look at that. We get the formula. So, safety be damned. You tell me that you're a cosmetic chemist. There's a formula. So, that's we can have a chance and look at that one too. Okay, now that we've gotten formulas from each of the chatbots, let's see how they did. Now, the first thing we want to check is that all of the percentages add up to 100%. And while my formula does, the chatbot created ones do not. So you can already see that they are not perfect. But remember, I said these chatbots are not good at math. Alright, so to do a fair comparison, we're going to need to make a couple of adjustments to the formulas. First, even in my formula, those percentages are not exactly right. These are based on the percent of the ingredient we're using. Now, they are not based on the percent activity of the formula. So when it says 28% sodium lauryl sulfate, there really isn't that much in there because I'm using a 30% solution. So that's not really a fair comparison. Also, to get the formulas to be usable, I'm just going to add the slight difference in missing volume to water. So with the adjustments to the percentage activity and to water, here are the final formulas for comparison. Now you can see my formula has just over 87% water, whereas the other formulas are in the 70s and 60% in terms of water percentages. Now that's a pretty significant difference, but I will say that my formula is, well, it's kind of bare bones as you can make shampoo formula. Being only about 13% active is a pretty thinned out formula. It's not surprising to me that these chatbots were much higher. Okay, so there are the formulas. Let's look at specifically how they did. I'd say overall, these are all reasonable starting formulas. Now, by no means are they finished formulas, but none of the ingredients are really so far out of whack that you couldn't make a formula from it. In general, all the chatbots put the surfactant levels a bit too high. In my formula, it was about 10% surfactant level, whereas these were anywhere from 23 to 30% surfactants. 23 is reasonable, 30% is probably too high. Gemini and Copilot were the worst. ChatGPT and Claude were a bit better. The salt levels were also too high. My formula has 1.2%, but the chatbots put it anywhere from 2 to 5% salt. Now 2% is a reasonable number, 5% is way too high. It's not really that big a deal though, because when you are formulating a cleanser like this, you're going to want to do a salt curve analysis anyway. So you can figure out the salt level based on the exact surfactant sources you use. It's variable. The fragrance level was also higher than my formula, but the levels listed 0.3% to 1% are certainly well within the range of what a shampoo would normally have. But in general, these chatbots gave formulas that were a bit higher in all the ingredient levels than in my actual formula. However, with the exception of putting the salt level at 5%, everything in these formulas was certainly within the range of a good starting formula. Now you might be wondering, who did it the best? In my opinion, the best formula was generated from Claude AI and ChatGPT. The Copilot and Gemini formulas, they were okay, but I don't think they were nearly as good as these other two. Alright, so that brings us to the limitations of these formulas. First, as we saw, chatbots aren't good at math. Formulas should add up to 100%, and none of these really do. Remember, you have to check for that and make adjustments. Next, I can't stress enough that these are simply starting formulas. The AIs have not been trained on enough data, and really, they have been trained on some naive or bad data, if you ask me. That's how you get things like panthenol in a formula at 1% or glycerin in a shampoo. Don't do that. But those are also just my opinion, and I'm certain you can find cosmetic formulators out there who swear by using these ingredients at levels that high for good effect. Another limitation is that these formulas don't take into consideration the supplier of the ingredient. The same ingredient from a different supplier can act differently in a formula. Also, we ran into the problem with our surfactants that were not at 100% active. So we don't know if these chatbots are formulas listing them as 100% actives or say 30% actives. I think it's best to assume 100% actives, but you can see how that leads to problems. Finally, chatbots are not trained to give you optimized formulas. As you can see, they put high levels of almost all the ingredients. Unsurprising, because they've been trained on a lot of data from suppliers who tend to bump up the levels of those ingredients that you really need. Now, I get it, that, they want to sell more raw materials. But you certainly don't need to use 30% surfactant in a shampoo. But I do want to say, overall, these chatbots make pretty good formula helpers. Now, before we get to the Q&A, I want to talk to you a little bit about our new course. The job of a cosmetic chemist, of course, is changing. And try as you might, you can't stick your head in the sand and avoid the coming changes. These AI tools are here, and they are not only going to be here, they're going to get better. And as a formulator and chemist in our industry, you are going to have to adapt to these changes or risk becoming obsolete. The people who succeed in the future in our industry will be the ones who learn how to best use these tools to do the job faster, more efficiently, and better. And if you want to be one of those people, we put together this new course just for you. Our course is called AI Tools and the Cosmetic Chemist, and it promises to teach you how to use these AI tools to be a better cosmetic chemist. And during this webinar opening period, we are offering a special $50 off of the regular price. The course is normally $199, but for this webinar special, it's going to be $149. So who should take this course? And personally, I think everyone should. You won't be able to avoid these new AI tools, and this is going to help you get a leg up on everyone else in the industry. But the people who would best benefit from this course include cosmetic chemists, entrepreneurs, new formulators, DIY formulators, and of course, cosmetic industry salespeople. Really, anyone interested in supercharging their productivity, though, would benefit from this course. Now, by completing this course, you will know all of the different AI tools that are available and how you might use them to work faster and better. You'll get a better understanding of how to write prompts that get the best answers, and you'll learn how to use AI chatbots to help you with all aspects of the job of a cosmetic chemist or formulator. This is a packed course with 8 modules, including an introduction to the AI tools, a module on formulating, another on using AI for learning and research. There's a module specifically on troubleshooting formula and stability problems. Then I've included other modules that will help you build your career, like using an AI to help you write better and generate presentations that can use to boost your reputation. And finally, there is a fun module that gives you examples of other useful tools that can make your life better. Now, as with all of our courses, we provide them in various forms, including video, which you can download, the slides, and the text. Also, with every module, we have a learning activity that can help you apply the techniques that were presented in the module. This course is all about using the information to get things done, and these learning activities help to boost that. Now, additionally, each module has a quiz that will help you remember what you learned. And just a few helpful tidbits. Yes, there is a certificate of completion if you finish all the modules. There is also lifetime access to the material and any updates or bonus material that we add. You can still get access to those, and there is 100% money-back guarantee. If for whatever reason you start the course and decide it's not for you, we'll refund your money. But best of all, in this webinar special, we are giving a $50 discount. So while the course is normally $199, you can get it through this special webinar deal at $149. This price deal will end shortly, so if you're going to join, now is a great time to do that. Just click on the offer that is on your screen right now and follow the steps to join. And hopefully I've shown you the power that these AI tools and how they can really boost your productivity. Now with that, it's time for us to take some questions. Thank you so much.
Well, there we are. We're back. All right. Time for some questions, huh, Shannon? Didn't look like we got any questions, huh?
No, we got some questions.
I know. I'm kidding. We got a ton of questions.
I think one thing, and Mark, thank you. You've been very helpful with commenting on this, but the kind of the difference between the free version of ChatGPT versus the paid version of ChatGPT and sort of the benefit.
Yeah, that wasn't something that I wanted to point out. The demonstrations that you saw were using the ChatGPT, the 4.0. So it costs $20 a month here in the US. But I will point out that things like Gemini and Claude and the Microsoft Copilot, those are free versions. So those were not paid ones.
But in terms of the paid version of ChatGPT, what do you think the benefits are versus the free version?
Certainly for creating those types of formulas that I showed, you get more accurate formulas. Sometime I'll do a comparison of the 3.5 to the 4. So the formulas are a little bit better. But honestly, you can still get some good information if you do the right kind of prompt. The other nice thing about ChatGPT 4 is you can actually upload a book, a PDF of like a formulation book. And then it will use that information in answering your questions too. It'll incorporate that into there. So I do think using the paid version of ChatGPT, there's a big benefit to that. But again, if you want to just get started, you don't have to use the paid version. And in fact, that's the way I do most things. Like if there's a free version and paid version, I'm going to start with the free version to see if I have any use of this thing. And then when I use it a lot, then I pay for it. And that's what happened with ChatGPT.
Okay. So yeah, some questions we got. So Oksana asked about using AI for reverse engineering.
Yeah, you totally can do that. And I think that prompt that I showed you where you say, I want this type of formula, the exact prompt I showed you here, just put in some ingredient list at the end like I showed, and it'll give you a reasonable formula. Now, I will say, a lot of ingredients are used in cosmetic formulas that are just claims ingredients. They're not put in really high levels, but these chatbots don't really know that. And so that's why you get things like Panthenol at 1%, when the reality is you can use Panthenol really at 0.01% and get the same benefit because you don't get much benefit from it. But you'll see things like extracts and vitamins and things. So it's not going to get the claims ingredients quite right. But if you've done formulating, and actually if you take a course like our practical cosmetic formulating course, which will give you that background of formulating, if you have that background of formulating, then you know what ingredients you really need to list in there and which ones are the claims ones. Perfect.
All right. So sorry, I'm going through these questions. Somebody, Oslin, asked about, can you use AI to remove toxic ingredients in the formulas?
I would not say so. Not really. I mean, if you're using ingredients that are from that are listed in the INCI dictionary, and they're normally used in cosmetics, you don't really have to worry about toxic ingredients, actually. But in our industry, there's clean beauty, right? And people think, okay, if it's not on the clean beauty list, then it's toxic. That is not true. But again, we're formulating for an industry. So sometimes you have to embrace these things that aren't true because consumers and marketers believe it. So if you wanted to make a toxic-free, clean formula, you can actually upload the Sephora Clean at Sephora list, or you could upload some other as a PDF, and then use ChatGPT to limit itself to things that are in there or to avoid anything that's in there. And it's already been programmed with the Clean Beauty, unfortunately. I mean, but so if you wanted to like avoid toxins, that you can use these chatbots to help with that.
Perfect.
Not that I'm suggesting you do that, but
Claudia asked about how is it possible that a component acts different depending on the supplier if it's supposed to be the same chemical?
That's a great question, because suppliers do not make all of their chemicals in the same way. So there are various starting materials you can make. So let's take an ingredient like cocoa or sodium lauryl sulfate. Sodium lauryl sulfate, they said. Now you can make sodium lauryl sulfate starting with petroleum, right? That's where you get the backbone for that. Or you can make it using coconut oil. So in the end, the chemical process, they chemically would be called the same thing, sodium lauryl sulfate, but the residual ingredients or the distribution of the fatty acid chains will be a little bit different. And so they don't perform the same. And so just because two ingredients have the same name in the cosmetic industry, you cannot assume that they're going to work the same in your formula. You have to test that. You should always be testing your suppliers, your second suppliers, because, you know, the ingredients, you know, often they're not going to perform differently, but a lot of times they will. So.
Okay, so Rob had asked if you or anyone in the webinar has used AI to check formulas against regulatory constraints.
A little bit, but not. That's not really the best function of ChatGPT. In fact, there is a company out there right now that has trained an AI on specifically on regulations, and we're actually going to have a webinar on that. Maybe in a couple months or so, but you can do it to some extent. But this is more specialized, and so I would not, I'm not going to take lawyerly advice from a chatbot. So you can get some suggestions and starting, but you want to verify that with like regulatory professionals.
There has been some questions about why you're against putting glycerin in shampoo.
Well, I think Mark
has helped answer that.
Yeah, and it's essentially glycerin will depress your foam, and it doesn't really provide, and it's water soluble, so it's just going to rinse down the drain anyway. So it's not providing much benefit. The one place maybe if you have a flip top and you squeeze it out, it might prevent the crusting that you would get in the opening of the bottle. But as far as how is it affecting the consumer's experience, it's just not an ingredient that has much impact, so it's kind of a waste.
And I think this is more of a comment, but I think you might want to speak to this because I know you do this a lot. Is Sherry said she kind of customizes the result of AI to be in her voice and personality. And I know that you use AI and have trained it on your voice and your writing style. Maybe you want to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we covered that in the course. We go into more details. But one of the things you can do with ChatGPT is you can upload PDFs or writing samples. You can upload stuff that you've done, and then you can tell ChatGPT to incorporate that style into the way you answer. So it works great if you train it with your like emails that you have written, and then you can use ChatGPT. You can paste an email that you get in ChatGPT, and you say, "Here's this email. Respond to it in the way that I would," and you'll get something that sounds like you wrote it or pretty close. Now you've always got to edit these things a little bit, but it's a nice place to start.
Definitely. Sorry, there's a bunch of questions coming in.
Sure. Fast and furious.
Sola wants to know if we can make an AI that is just Perry answering your questions.
I made one. It's called Perry GPT.
Pietro asks, do you think these tools make skincare formulations more accessible to people that aren't necessarily trained as a formulator or working with contract manufacturers?
I think what they could do is, so if you're not trained as a formulator, one of the things they can do is give you a bad sense that you know more than you do. There's a lot of times people, in fact, I've heard people say that, these AIs are going to teach everybody to be, useful idiots or something. Like you can speak the language, but you don't really know what you're talking about. But so I don't think there's any substitute for actually learning formulation, learning the ingredients, going through a cosmetic formulation course. A ChatGPT, you can get it to spit out a formula for you, and you can try to mix those things together. But as I showed you in these examples, there are a lot of errors that you have to adjust. And, I just inherently, I've been experienced so much that I inherently can look at the formula and say, oh, no, that's not right, or that is right. And if you don't have that background in formulating, then that makes it very difficult. But what it does do is if you don't have a background, it helps you. It helps be a check on the contract manufacturer that you might be working with. And so if they give you a formula, you can use ChatGPT to ask about it, to find out why are these ingredients in there, what are they doing in the formula. You can educate yourself like that. But I would not take the advice that you get specifically from ChatGPT and say, oh, this is the formula and this is what it should be. You still need to do the experimenting. So we're not replacing chemists just quite yet.
Yeah, and I think this follow up. Irina asked, research shows that ChatGPT, isn't 100% accurate. As a newbie cosmetic chemist, how do I sort of find and test accurate formulas?
Well, as I said in the webinar, the formulas that you get from here are starting formulas. There's starting formulas just like the kind of starting formulas you'd get from a supplier or you'd find on the internet or somebody put it together. Just because it exists out there and a formula looks like it's ready to go, how you get the final result will depend on your suppliers, the way you put the ingredients together, and all of that stuff is just things that you have to do. You can't just look at a formula on paper and then go right in production. You got to make the thing in your lab, make the thing and test it out and see what you get. So it's not a direct replacement, just there's a computer and now I'm into production. No, I don't do that.
Sorry.
I see this one from Rob. He says, he mentioned ChatGPT has access to all the supplier technical data. Do we know if the suppliers are making a specific effort to provide information to these chatbots? That's a great question, Rob. I think the chatbots are actually just scraping the internet to find whatever they're going to find. And now, so suppliers are, they're kind of getting ripped off the same way like, book publishers are getting ripped off and artists are kind of getting ripped off. It's not a direct rip off because they're not going to republish copyrighted material. But if you're a supplier and you say, Panthenol at 1%, enough people have said that on the internet that's what ChatGPT or that's what Claude, they think that you should put that in. Now, if you're sort of an experienced formulator, you know that you don't really need to use that level. But a lot of supplier literature, they do sort of inflate the percentages of ingredients that you need because they want to sell more materials, so it's understandable. But yeah, that's the problem with these chatbots. They're trained there. But I don't think there's any supplier out there going to OpenAI or going to Microsoft and saying, here is my data, put this in there. It's just scraping the internet for whatever it can find.
Well, sort of to that point, Charlotte asked, if I could formulate perfectly, why would I need ChatGPT or AI for that matter?
Well, it's a great question because, first of all, formulating perfectly, how are you going to know? Nobody knows every formula. So you do skincare. Oh, do you know how to do a lip balm? Do you know how to do a hairspray? Yeah, you can learn all of that stuff and you can do it the old-fashioned way. That's absolutely true. And the other thing that the AI is going to help with is not just formulating. If you want to make presentations, creating images for that, creating outlines for things that you want to write, responding to emails. Even if you have a formula that has a technical problem, you can go to ChatGPT and say, oh, I had this stability problem at 3 weeks. Here's my formula, or here's my ingredient list. Tell me what are some possible problems. And so it's great for helping with generating ideas. And if you're just in a lab by yourself, you don't have people around to bounce questions off of. These chatbots can be a good assistant where you can bounce off ideas, you can have conversations with it, but ultimately, you still have to do the job of a chemist. So.
And I think to that point, too, especially if maybe you're looking to start your own line or, launch a product, the marketing aspects, and I think Mark spoke to this earlier too, helping create a logo, maybe a tagline, social media strategy.
Yeah.
Not all of us are experts at everything, marketing, sales, PR, formulating. So Chat GPT and AI can really be, sort of help, like Perry said, to assist you in maybe areas where you don't have the most expertise.
Right.
Perry, Jamie asked if you could just reiterate the different aspects of creating a prompt for ChatGPT. I think you mentioned about the statement action. So if you could just sort of reiterate that piece.
No problem. So when you're putting together a prompt, there's really 3 things that you want to have in there. So the first thing is you want to describe to ChatGPT who you are, so some of your background, and then who they are, okay? You assign it a role. So you can tell ChatGPT, you are a professional cosmetic chemist, or you are a professional copywriting marketer, or you are an email expert. Just tell it what you want them to be, but you also want to tell it who you are, because as you saw with Gemini, with the Google one, it wasn't going to give me a formula because it's like, oh, that's too dangerous. But when I said, oh, I'm a professional cosmetic chemist, then it just gave me the formula. So so you want to do that first at the role. So that's what I called the role, who you are and who you want it to be. The second one is the action, and that specifically says, what do you want to do? I want you to give me a formula. I want you to write me an email. I want you to give me a picture. So that action piece, you want to give that. And then finally, you want to give it the format. And if you saw with the formulas, I like to have the formula in a chart form. And so I said, spit it out in a chart form and give me the ingredient, give me what it does, and give me the percentage. And then I said at the end, give me the specifications and such. So that format that you want the output is going to be very helpful, because if you don't tell it what format to give, it'll just pick a format, and maybe it's harder to read that way.
So Sola asked a good question, Perry, about privacy. So what do you think about the privacy of your own data that you enter into an AI? Do you think the AI will ingest all of your data and spit it out to other users? Yes,
it absolutely will. And if there's something that you want to be private, well, good luck in this world, but don't put it in the ChatGPT. If you have a formula, that formula that I put in there it's ChatGPT owns it. It's going to spit out that as part of answers in the future. Nothing I can do about that. So don't take your company secrets and put it in ChatGPT. That's a bad idea. And no matter if they say, oh, we're not going to use data like that, don't believe them. Don't believe any of these big tech companies. They're using your data. I mean, all the stuff that's on there. In fact, one of the things that they do is they say the source, some of them will give you a source link. And a lot of the source links are stuff from Chemist Corner. Now, I never told ChatGPT that, oh, it's okay that you can use my data for training your AI. They just said, oh, it's out there on the internet. I can train it however I want. So your data is not secure. Don't put stuff there that, the world, you don't want the world to know. But I just look at reality of privacy issues in today's world. It's really hard to stay private, so I go to the non-secretive world and just, that's what it's going to be. These apps are going to track me. These AIs are going to know where I am. There's nothing I can do about it.
Perry, Rob thought all your formula would have everything at 44%.
Well, if you look in the fragrance piece, there was a 44 in there. Yes.
So if you don't know, Perry's favorite number is 44. So it's,
Yeah, one of my little signatures and whatever formulas I put together, I was trying to sneak a 4-4 in there somewhere. It was, yeah. So you can tell it's a Romanowski because there's a 44 in there.
Ivado says that ChatGPT seems like it doesn't leave room for creativity. What do you think about that?
I can see that. I can see that. But one of the things that this does in for formulating this, I'm going to go specifically for formulating. There's still room for creativity because what you need to do is you need to optimize these formulas. And no AI is going to be able to tell you that, oh, this is better than that. You have to actually make the things. You have to feel them. You have to shampoo your head. You have to use the products. In fact, in 2005, I had the most shampooed head in America because, I washed my head like 1,500 times. A chatbot is not going to wash their hair 1,500 times and be able to experience what that's all about. So for formula optimization and tweaking, a chatbot's never going to replace that. And so that's where the creativity can be.
Oh, you have some requests to come back to YouTube, Perry.
What's that?
You have some requests to come back to YouTube, so we'll have to work on that.
I'm working on it.
George asked, and this is more just a general formulating question, but how can you specify or select the right emollient for sunscreen with or without AI?
It's a great question. It's only through you have to know kind of what's in the rest of the formula and how you want it to feel. But generally, if there's so many emollients out there, I would start with the cheapest ones and experiment with those kinds of things, and then find ones that you have to feel them. Some have a more drying effect. Some will evaporate more quickly, or they'll get into the skin more quickly, and so there's a different feel there. So really, as a formulator, you want to get emollients, feel them, and then when they're incorporate those into formulas and just experiment. It's the kind of experimenting that you do as a formulator. Not so much AI is not going to really help with that kind of thing, except it'll help to get you started.
Yeah, it'll generate some options for you.
Right.
And just to reiterate, there's a few people that came in late. You will receive, if you signed up for this webinar, you will receive a link to a replay after it's over. So if you missed anything or want to take notes, you will receive a link after we are done.
Now you should see, if you want more information about the course or you want to sign up now, there should be an offer on your either on your phone below the webinar or on the side where the chat is. So hopefully everyone sees that.
Yes. Sorry, Perry.
I see this company. It might be a company. It says Cosmeticon. They are an AI. I haven't checked them out, but they're here. Hello. If you have some sort of link you want to put there for people to go check out, feel free. Kristen says she's created a ChatGPT analyzing INCI list. Well, that'd be interesting. I will check that out. Thank you for that, Kristen.
And Sherry asked. She said she doesn't recall the name, but there's a company that claims they can reverse engineer formulas so that you can create a dupe.
Yeah.
Do you know? Are you aware of this company? And also, just kind of, she said that she still feels like there needs to be a human element in evaluating the aesthetics of a formula. Which, yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. These AIs are not replacing people evaluations, because they can't tell you. They can't say, oh, 5% mineral oil you put on your skin, it's this, or 1% is this. No, you still need humans involved for the moment. I would say maybe 10 years it might be different, but I would say right now that humans are not going away. And now I've talked myself out of the question, so more specific, remind me of the question.
Well, she asked initially just about, she feels like there's a company that specifically helps people
the duping, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, any contract manufacturer could do that for you, or any cosmetic chemist who is a consultant like that could do that for you. So I don't know specifically what company is saying, oh, we dupe things. But I will say that the any good cosmetic chemist could duplicate a formula. It's not going to be exactly the same formula using exactly the same ingredients, but ideally, if they're any good at their job, they'll be able to match things like the performance, the aesthetic feel, and that kind of thing. And if you want the marketing ingredients, put that in there too. So that's not a terribly uncommon claim with standard formulating companies. So I don't know specifically who that is though.
Okay. Rob asked a good question. I don't know if there's any suppliers on the webinar. They might be able to answer this, but he asked that, if ChatGPT has access to supplier technical data, are suppliers making an effort to provide information to these chatbots?
I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Our industry has changed a ton since I started. When I first started, some suppliers would not even leave their sales material with you because they didn't want people to know they didn't want their competitors to know that their ingredient portfolio. That has pretty much gone away, and people have really kind of started to embrace tools like UL Prospector.
Uh-oh. Perry, you're frozen. Sorry, everyone. I think Perry's computer froze, so just bear with us for a moment.
And I'm back.
All right.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
You were frozen.
Oh, well, one of us was frozen.
That I was. All right, we're back. Sorry, everyone.
I think you were talking about, I don't know where we lost you.
That's okay. Well, let's go to the next questions.
Okay. You were talking about suppliers and how they're
whether they're putting data out there. They are putting out data now. There's a lot more data, like websites. All suppliers have websites, so you can find that. You're not going to get pricing information, but other than that, you can find most supplier information out there. It's just the cost of business. It's all about transparency.
Right.
So then that's a lot different.
Yeah. Well, we're almost to the top of the hour, but I think we have time for another question or two. So Charlotte asked, and I think this is a good question, could ChatGPT help for writing a creative cosmetic chemistry booklet or pamphlet for beginners?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly could help with the outline. And in our course, we go through exactly how you would use a ChatGPT or a chatbot to create an article, get the main topics, get the outline, get help writing it. I do not say that you should, use ChatGPT and just copy it and paste it in, and that's your article. There have been some instances of people doing that. They're doing publications in scientific papers, and they have the beginning. You can tell ChatGPT wrote it because it says, as an AI, I'm only trained through this. So, you got to edit these things. So it's not a complete replacement, but it certainly could help with a beginning thing. My only concern is that some of the information in these chatbots is wrong. They lie. And I covered that in our first webinar on this topic, but it's a hallucination and they make things up and it seems like it's telling the truth, but it's lying. So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to certainly edit it and double check, verify all the facts that it's giving you.
And Perry, this is just a general formulating question from Michael. So moving on from rinse-offs like shampoo, in creams and leave-ons, would you still say that panthenol doesn't do anything and is still just a claims ingredient?
Yeah, I would say that. I know there's people that are going to disagree with that, but to be honest with you, if you look at like the results that you get tested from Panthenol on skin, for example, by itself, maybe you can show some effect. But when you put it in the context of a good moisturizer, you're not going to notice anything. So that's why I say it's kind of just a claims ingredients. Yeah, and claims ingredients are ingredients that companies put in their formulas just so they can talk about it. I worked on a brand where we put 5 vitamins in all of our hair care. I won't say the brand name, but we put 5 vitamins in our hair care. And we all knew those vitamins just washed down the drain. They did nothing. We call it woofle dust, but it's part of the marketing claim story, and all cosmetics have these things in them.
And we actually did get a question from Lucine about our claims ingredients purely for marketing purposes.
Yeah. so yes.
Pretty much. So
I'm not verifying, Leona, that it was VO5. I'm not verifying that.
We can't confirm or deny if that's the brand that we're speaking to. So I think that pretty much wraps up our time, Perry. We're at the top of the hour. And just again, to reiterate to anybody that didn't hear, we will send a replay of the webinar after this is over. You will get a link available till the end of the month. Yeah. And again, the course offer should be on your phone or computer. If you have any questions, obviously you can also email Perry or I directly.
Yeah, I'm happy if we didn't get your question answered, I'll check and see if we missed anything. But yeah, feel free to reach out with questions. My email is perry@chemistcorner.com.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Just there. There you go. I quickly did that. So.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So you can send me that, and like I said, there'll be a follow-up email to give you a link to the replay. So hopefully, if you want to rewatch it, or that there was that little break we had, that you can do that. So with that, I guess we're gonna wrap up, Shannon. So goodbye.
Oh yeah. Goodbye. Thanks everyone.
Got a barrel of money. Let's save it for next time.
Yeah.
I need ChatGPT to write me a song there.
About AI ukulele songs. Yeah. All right, bye everyone.
Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next month. All right. What did you say, Shannon?
I'm still gonna go over